The glass shattered before anyone could react, splintering into 1,000 jagged pieces across the hardwood floor. My mother's voice, sharp as a blade, had just sliced through the room. "I'm proud of all my kids except one." And there I stood, her youngest son, Ethan, feeling the weight of her words like a punch to the chest. The dining room was suffocating, the air thick with the scent of her famous rosemary roast and the unspoken resentment that had simmered for years. My siblings, Claire, the eldest, a polished lawyer with a smile that could disarm anyone, and Michael, the middle child, a doctor with a heart too big for his own good, sat frozen, their forks hovering over their plates. Mom's declaration wasn't new, but saying it aloud, here, at her annual family unity dinner, was a grenade lobbed into the fragile truce we'd maintained. I was 25, the failure who dropped out of college to chase a music career that hadn't taken off. Mom never let me forget it. Claire had her corner office. Michael had his hospital wing named after him, and I had a guitar and a string of gigs at dive bars. To her, I was the blemish on her perfect family portrait. "Why, Mom?" I asked, my voice low but steady, though my hands trembled under the table. "Why am I the one you're ashamed of?" Her eyes, cold and unyielding, met mine. "You threw away everything, Ethan. You could have been something, but you chose nothing." Claire shifted uncomfortably, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table. "Mom, come on. Let's not do this tonight." But Mom wasn't done. "No, Claire. He needs to hear it. I gave you all the same chances, but Ethan squandered his. No degree, no stability, no future." Michael, ever the peacemaker, tried to intervene. "He's talented, Mom. You've never even heard him play." "I don't need to," she snapped. "Talent doesn't pay bills. It doesn't build a legacy." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat. For years, I'd swallowed her criticism, her disappointment, her endless comparisons to my siblings. But tonight, something snapped. I wasn't going to let her words define me anymore. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "You're wrong about me," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and conviction. "And I'm going to prove it." Mom's lips curled into a skeptical smirk. "Prove it? Ethan, you've been saying that for years." I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, plain envelope. It was light, almost weightless, but it carried the weight of everything I'd been holding back. I walked to the sideboard, where her glass of water sat, and dropped the envelope into it. The paper floated for a moment before sinking, the ink inside blurring into the liquid. "What is that?" Mom demanded, her voice sharp but tinged with unease. "You'll see," I said, turning to leave. "Open it when you're ready to listen." As I walked out, the sound of Claire's gasp and Michael's murmured, "Ethan, wait," followed me. But I didn't stop. The envelope wasn't just a gesture, it was a reckoning. That night, I drove to my tiny apartment, the city lights blurring through the windshield. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Claire, Michael, even Dad, who'd been silent through most of the dinner. I ignored them all. The envelope wasn't for them. It was for Mom, and it held something she'd never expected, a letter I'd written years ago, when I was 19, pouring out every ounce of pain her rejection had caused. I kept it hidden, revising it over the years, adding to it every time she dismissed me. But tonight, I'd added something else: a ticket to my first major gig, headlining at a local theater next month. It wasn't a dive bar. It was a real stage, with a real audience, and I'd earned it. The letter wasn't kind. It detailed every time she'd made me feel worthless, every comparison that had chipped away at my confidence. But it also explained why I'd kept going, because music wasn't just a hobby. It was my way of proving I was more than her disappointment. The ticket was my challenge. Come see me. Or don't. But you can't ignore me anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch, strumming my guitar, wondering if she'd even open the envelope. Part of me hoped she wouldn't. Part of me prayed she would. The next morning, Claire showed up at my door, her face a mix of worry and exasperation. "Ethan, what the hell was that last night?" she demanded, pushing past me into the apartment. "Mom's a mess. She hasn't opened the envelope yet, but she's freaking out about it." "Good," I said, leaning against the counter. "She should be." Claire sighed, running a hand through her hair. "You don't get it, do you? She's not just hard on you. She's hard on herself. She thinks she failed you." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Failed me? She's the one who decided I'm a failure." "She's wrong," Claire said, her voice softening. "But she's still our mom. Whatever's in that envelope, it's going to hit her hard." I didn't respond. Claire didn't know what was in the letter. No one did. And I wasn't sure I was ready for the fallout when Mom finally read it. By noon, Michael called. "She opened it," he said, his voice heavy. "She's been crying all morning." "Ethan, what did you write?" I gripped the phone, my stomach twisting. "The truth. She wants to see you," he said. "Tonight. At the house." I didn't want to go. Every fiber of me screamed to stay away, to let her stew in the words I'd written. But something, maybe the part of me that still wanted her approval, made me agree. When I arrived, the house felt different. The warmth of the previous night's dinner was gone, replaced by a heavy stillness. Mom sat in the living room, the envelope on the coffee table, its edges damp and crumpled. Her eyes were red, her face pale. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." I sat across from her, my heart pounding. For the first time in years, she didn't look like the untouchable matriarch. She looked small, fragile, human. "I read your letter," Mom began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The envelope lay between us like a landmine, its contents exposed and raw. "I didn't know. I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you." Her words caught me off guard. I'd expected anger, defensiveness, maybe even denial. But this vulnerability was new. I stayed silent, letting her continue. "When you were born," she said, her eyes drifting to a photo on the mantel, "I had such big dreams for you. Claire was already on her path. Michael was thriving. But you were my baby. I wanted you to have everything. Then why did you make me feel like nothing?" My voice cracked, betraying the anger I'd tried to bury. She flinched, as if I'd struck her. "I thought I was pushing you to be better. I saw your potential, Ethan, but I didn't understand your choices. Dropping out, chasing music felt like you were throwing away your future." "My future," I said, leaning forward, "is mine to choose, not yours." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know that now. But back then, I was scared. Scared you'd end up struggling, regretting everything. I thought if I was tough on you, you'd find your way." Her words hung heavy, a confession I hadn't expected. For years, I'd seen her criticism as cruelty. But now I glimpsed something else: fear, wrapped in misguided love. It didn't erase the pain, but it cracked the wall I'd built between us. "Then why say it?" I asked. "Why tell everyone I'm the one you're not proud of?" She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the envelope. I was angry. At myself. Mostly. Every time I saw you struggling, I felt like I'd failed as a mother. Saying those things, it was easier than admitting I didn't know how to help you. I wanted to scream, to tell her how her words had haunted me, how they'd fueled every doubt I'd ever had. But seeing her like this, broken and honest, made me pause. For the first time, I saw her not as the untouchable figure who judged me, but as a woman grappling with her own flaws. "I kept the ticket," she said suddenly, pulling the damp piece of paper from the envelope. Your gig. I want to come. I froze. The gig was my chance to prove myself. Not just to her, but to everyone who doubted me. The thought of her there, watching, judging it terrified me. But it also felt like a chance. A slim one. To bridge the gap between us. Okay, I said finally. But don't come to judge. Come to listen. She nodded. A small, tentative smile breaking through. I will. The next few weeks were a blur of rehearsals. The gig was at the Blue Note, a local theater with a reputation for showcasing up-and-coming talent. I'd landed the slot through sheer persistence, networking with club owners and playing every open mic I could find. This wasn't just a performance, it was my shot to show the world. And Mom, that I wasn't a failure. Claire and Michael were supportive. As always. Claire helped me design flyers. Her marketing savvy turning my amateur gig into something that looked professional. Michael, meanwhile, kept checking in, making sure I wasn't spiraling under the pressure. You've got this, he'd say, his voice steady and warm. Just be you. But Mom's presence loomed over everything. I didn't know if she'd actually show up, or if she did, whether she'd walk away still ashamed. The letter had been my weapon, but now I had to back it up with something real. The night of the gig arrived, crisp and electric. The Blue Note was packed. The crowd a mix of locals, music nerds, and a few industry scouts I'd invited on a whim. Backstage, my hands shook as I tuned my guitar, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Claire found me before the show, her face lit with excitement. You're gonna kill it, she said, pulling me into a hug. And, Mom's here. Front row. My stomach dropped. Front row? Yeah, she said, squeezing my arm. She's nervous. Ethan, give her a reason to believe in you. I nodded, swallowing hard. The lights dimmed. The crowd's chatter faded. And I stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit me, warm and blinding. And for a moment, I couldn't see her. But I knew she was there, waiting. I started with a slow, soulful ballad, one I'd written after a particularly brutal fight with Mom. The lyrics were raw, aching, a confession of all the times I'd felt unworthy. The crowd was silent, hanging on every note. As I transitioned to an upbeat track, the energy shifted, the room coming alive with claps and cheers. I poured everything into Ivory rejection. Every sleepless night. Every moment I'd fought to prove I was enough. When I glanced at the front row, I saw her. Mom. Her eyes were wet. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For the first time, she wasn't looking at me with judgment. She was listening. After the show, the crowd's applause still echoed in my ears as I made my way to the bar. Friends and strangers alike slapped my back, offering congratulations. But my eyes kept darting to the exit, wondering if Mom would stay or slip away. She stayed. She found me near the stage, her face unreadable. Ethan, she said, her voice soft but steady. That was incredible. I didn't know what to say. Her approval, something I'd craved for so long, felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. Thanks, I managed, my throat tight. I was wrong, she said, stepping closer. I didn't understand what music means to you. I do now. Her words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to believe her, but years of doubt didn't vanish in a single night. I'm glad you came, I said, choosing my words carefully. But this doesn't fix everything. I know, she said, her voice breaking. But I want to try. I want to be better. I nodded, unsure if I was ready to forgive, but willing to let her try. For now, that was enough. The weeks after the gig felt like stepping into a new world. The Blue Note performance had gone viral locally, with clips of my set circulating on social media. A small record label reached out, offering a meeting to discuss a potential deal. It wasn't fame, not yet, but it was a start. For the first time, I felt like my dreams weren't just fantasies, they were possible. But the real change was with Mom. She called me the day after the show. Her voice hesitant but warm. "Ethan, can we have coffee? Just the two of us." I agreed, though part of me braced for another lecture. Instead, she listened. We sat in a quiet cafe, and she asked about my music, my process, my hopes. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge. It was strange, almost unsettling, to see her try so hard. "I kept your letter," she admitted, stirring her coffee. "I've read it a dozen times. It hurts, Ethan, but I needed to hear it." I nodded, unsure how to respond. Her honesty was disarming, but trust wasn't built in a single conversation. "I'm glad you're trying," I said, "but it's going to take time." "I know," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want to be part of your life." That conversation became the first of many. She started texting me, small things at first, asking about my day, sharing a memory from when I was a kid. Once, she sent a photo of me at 5, strumming a toy guitar, with a caption, "You've always had music in you." It was cheesy, but it made me smile. Meanwhile, my career was picking up. The label meeting went better than I'd hoped. They offered a small contract to record an EP, with a modest advance and a promise of studio time. It wasn't a fortune, but it was validation. Claire and Michael were thrilled, bombarding me with texts and celebratory emojis. Even Dad, who'd always stayed out of the family drama, called to say, "I knew you had it in you, kid." But Mom's reaction meant the most. When I told her about the deal, she didn't just congratulate me, she asked to hear the songs I was working on. I hesitated, still wary of her judgment, but invited her to my apartment. She sat on my worn-out couch, listening to my demos on a cheap speaker. When the last note faded, she didn't speak right away. Then she said, "These are beautiful, Ethan. I'm so proud of you." Those words, "I'm so proud of you," hit like a tidal wave. I'd spent years chasing them, and now they were real. But they also felt fragile, like they could vanish if I let my guard down. As my music gained traction, so did the tension at home. Mom was trying, but old habits died hard. At a family dinner a month later, she slipped, praising Claire's latest case and Michael's new research grant while glancing at me with a hesitant smile. "And Ethan's doing his music thing," she said, her tone just shy of dismissive. Claire shot me a look, her eyes apologetic. Michael cleared his throat, steering the conversation to safer ground. But I felt its sting of being the other kid, the one whose success didn't fit her mold. I didn't say anything, but I wondered if her pride was genuine or just a reaction to my letter. Later, as we cleared the table, Mom pulled me aside. "I didn't mean it like that," she said, her voice low. "I'm still learning how to talk about your work. It's different from what I know." I nodded, but the doubt lingered. "I need you to see me as I am, Mom, not as what you wanted me to be." She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "I'm trying, Ethan. I promise." The EP recording was grueling but exhilarating. I spent long nights in the studio, tweaking lyrics and melodies, pouring my soul into every track. One song, "Glass and Water," was about that night at the dinner table, the envelope, the shattered glass, the moment I'd taken a stand. The producer loved it, calling it the heart of the EP. I invited Mom to the studio one day, half expecting her to decline. But she came, sitting quietly in the control room as I recorded a vocal take. When I finished, she clapped, her face lit with a mix of awe and pride. "That was you?" she asked, almost disbelieving. "That was my son." For the first time, I felt like she saw men at the dropout, not the disappointment, but the artist I'd fought to become. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the EP's release date approached, I started to notice a change in Mom's demeanor. She was more present, more engaged. She'd ask about my rehearsals, my plans, even my fears. One night, she called me out of the blue, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I need to tell you something." I braced myself, expecting a lecture or a backhanded compliment. Instead, she said, "I was wrong to compare you to your siblings. You're not them, and you don't have to be. I'm proud of you for being you." Her words caught me off guard, stirring something deep inside. I wanted to believe her, but part of me still feared it was temporary, a fleeting moment of guilt rather than real change. "Thanks, Mom," I said, my voice thick. "I hope you mean it." "I do," she said, "and I'll keep proving it." The EP dropped on a chilly November morning, and the response was beyond anything I'd imagined. Local radio stations picked up Glass and Water, and my social media buzzed with messages from fan strangers who'd heard my story in the lyrics and felt it in their bones. The label was thrilled, scheduling interviews and a follow-up gig at a bigger venue. For the first time, I felt like I was building something real. Mom was there for the release party, a small event at a downtown bar. She mingled awkwardly with my musician friends, her tailored blazer out of place among their ripped jeans and tattoos. But she stayed, sipping a soda and clapping along to the acoustic set I played. When I dedicated Glass and Water to her, her eyes glistened, and she mouthed, "Thank you." After the set, she pulled me aside. "I listened to the whole EP this morning," she said. "Every song. It's like I'm meeting you for the first time." Her words hit deep, stirring a mix of gratitude and lingering pain. "I've always been here, Mom," I said. "You just weren't looking." She nodded, her face tight with emotion. "I know, and I'm sorry." That apology, simple as it was, felt like a turning point. But I wasn't naive. Years of hurt didn't vanish with a few kind words. I needed to see her follow through. Over the next few months, Mom made an effort. She came to more gigs, even dragging Dad along. She started sharing my music with her friends, bragging about my son, the musician. It was surreal, hearing her talk about me with pride instead of pity. But there were still moments when her old habits surfaced, a backhanded comment about stability or a comparison to Claire's latest promotion. Each time, I called her out, and to her credit, she listened. Claire and Michael noticed the shift too. At a family brunch, Claire leaned over and whispered, "She's trying. Ethan, give her a little grace." I nodded, but grace was hard when the scars were still fresh. Michael, ever the optimist, chimed in later. "She's proud of you. Man, she just doesn't always know how to show it." "I know," I said, "but I need her to keep showing it." The bigger gig came faster than I expected, a sold-out show at a 500-seat theater. The label had pulled strings to get me there, and the pressure was immense. I spent weeks preparing, obsessing over every detail. Mom insisted on helping, offering to organize a pre-show dinner for the family. I agreed, hoping it wouldn't end in another disaster. The dinner was at her house, the same dining room where she dropped her bombshell months ago. This time, the atmosphere was lighter. Claire brought wine. Michael told bad jokes, and Dad even complimented my latest single. Mom was quieter than usual, but when she spoke, it was to ask about my set list or how I was feeling. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like family. Before dessert, she stood, holding up her glass. "I want to make a toast," she said, her voice steady. "To Ethan, for chasing his dreams, and for teaching me what pride really means." The room went quiet, and I felt my throat tighten. Claire squeezed my hand under the table, and Michael grinned. Even Dad nodded, a rare show of emotion. I raised my glass, meeting Mom's eyes. "To family," I said, "and to second chances." The night of the theater show was electric. The crowd roared as I took the stage, my guitar slung over my shoulder. I spotted Mom in the audience, sitting with Claire and Michael, her face lit with anticipation. The set was my best yet, each song a piece of my story: pain, hope, defiance, love. When I played Glass and Water, the crowd sang along, and I saw Mom wipe her eyes. Backstage afterward, she hugged me, her arms trembling. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "I always should have been." I hugged her back, feeling the weight of years begin to lift. "Thanks, Mom," I said. "I'm glad you're here." But life isn't a fairy tale, and our story didn't end with that hug. A few weeks later, at another family dinner, Mom slipped again. She was talking about Claire's new case, Michael's latest award, and then she turned to me. "And Ethan's? Well, he's doing his music," she said, her tone just shy of patronizing. The room tensed. Claire shot me a look, and Michael cleared his throat. I set my fork down, my jaw tight. "Mom," I said, "if you're proud of me, say it. Don't qualify it." She froze, her face paling. "I didn't mean." "I know," I cut in, "but you keep doing it. I'm not your project, Mom. I'm your son." She nodded, tears welling. "You're right. I'm sorry." This time, her apology felt different, less like a reaction, more like a promise. I didn't forgive her fully. Not yet. But I believed she was trying. And for now, that was enough. The months that followed were a balancing act. My career was soaring: more gigs, more streams, even a small tour lined up with a few other indie artists. But with Mom, it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. She was trying, no question, but her old instincts, her need to control, to compare, kept creeping in. Each time, I pushed back, and each time, she seemed to listen a little more. One afternoon, she showed up at my apartment unannounced, a rare occurrence. She held a small box, her expression nervous. "I found this in the attic," she said, handing it to me. Inside was my old toy guitar, the one from the photo she'd sent. Its strings were rusted, the paint chipped, but it felt like holding a piece of my childhood. "I kept it," she said, her voice soft. "Even when I didn't understand your music, I couldn't let it go." I ran my fingers over the cracked wood, memories flooding back. "I used to play this for hours," I said. "You hated the noise." She laughed, a sad, quiet sound. "I didn't hate it. I just didn't know how to support it." We sat on my couch, talking about the past, not just the fights, but the good moments too. She told me about the time I'd performed for the neighbors at 6, strumming that toy guitar like it was a stadium show. For the first time, I felt like she was seeing me, not as a disappointment, but as the kid who'd always had a song in his heart. The tour was a whirlwind: 6 cities in 2 weeks. Small venues packed with fans who knew my lyrics by heart. I sent Mom updates, half expecting her to brush them off. But she responded to every text, asking about the crowds, the venues, even the food. When I got back, she insisted on throwing a welcome home dinner. The dinner was different from the others. Mom didn't dominate the conversation with stories of Claire or Michael. Instead, she asked me about the tour, listening as I described the highs and lows. When I mentioned a particularly tough night, a small crowd, a broken string, she didn't offer advice or judgment. She just said, "You kept going. That's what matters." Later, as we cleared the dishes, she pulled me aside. "I'm learning, Ethan," she said. "I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to be the mother you deserve." Her words hit hard, not because they were new, but because they felt real. I hugged her, something I hadn't done in years, without hesitation. "Keep trying, Mom," I said. "That's all I ask." But the real test came a month later. The label offered me a bigger contract, a full album, a national tour, a real shot at breaking through. It was everything I dreamed of, but it meant moving to Nashville for 6 months to record. I told the family over dinner, expecting excitement. Claire and Michael were thrilled, but Mom's face tightened. "Nashville," she said, her voice sharp. That's so far. What about stability? Ethan, a real job. The room went silent. Claire glared at her, and Michael sighed. I felt the old anger rising, but I kept my voice calm. This is my job, Mom. This is my life. She opened her mouth, then stopped, her eyes darting to the envelope on the sideboard still there. A reminder of that night. You're right, she said finally. I'm sorry. I worry. I know, I said, but I need you to trust me. She nodded, her lips trembling. I do. I'm proud of you, Ethan. I mean it. The move to Nashville was daunting, but exhilarating. I rented a small apartment, spent my days in the studio, and my nights writing songs. Mom called weekly, asking about my progress, never once mentioning stability. She even sent a care package coffee, snacks, and a new photo of that toy guitar, framed. One night, I called her, needing to hear her voice. Mom, I said, I'm scared. What if this doesn't work out? She was quiet for a moment, then said, then you try again. You're stronger than you know, Ethan. And I'm here, no matter what. Her words carried me through the long studio hours, the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt. For the first time, I felt like I had a partner in her, not a critic. When I came home for a visit, Mom surprised me with a small gathering, just family. No pressure. She'd hung posters from my tour around the living room, a quiet gesture of pride. As we sat around the table, she raised her glass. To Ethan, she said, for teaching me what it means to chase a dream. I smiled, raising my glass. To family, I said, and to learning together. Nashville was a crucible. The studio sessions were intense, the label's expectations high, but every chord I played felt like a step toward something bigger. My songs were evolving, weaving stories of family, forgiveness, and the fight to be seen. Glass and Water was still the heart of the album, but new tracks like Roots and Wings, about Mom and you, are taking shape. Each one carried a piece of our journey. Mom kept her promise to stay involved. She'd text after every studio update. Her message is short but sincere. Can't wait to hear the new song. Or proud of you, Ethan. Once, she sent a voice memo, her voice shaky but warm. I listened to your rough cut of Roots and Wings. It made me cry. You're telling our story. I played that memo on repeat, letting her words fuel me through the late nights. Back home, Claire and Michael were my biggest cheerleaders. Claire used her connections to get my music featured on a popular indie playlist, boosting my streams. Michael, meanwhile, showed up to one of my local gigs during a visit, cheering louder than anyone. But it was Mom's quiet support that surprised me most. She'd started following music blogs, learning about the industry, asking questions I didn't expect. What's a producer's role? Or how do royalties work? It was her way of stepping into my world. One night, I called her from my Nashville apartment, exhausted but buzzing from a good session. Mom, I said, I'm putting your name in the album credits. For inspiring me, even when it was hard. She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. I don't deserve that, she said, but I'm honored. You do deserve it, I said. You're part of this. The album was nearly done when I got a call from Claire. Mom's planning something, she said, her voice teasing. She won't tell me what, but it's big. Be ready. I didn't know what to expect, but when I flew home for a break, I found out. Mom had organized a listening party for the album's rough cuts, inviting family, friends, and even a few local music critics. The living room was transformed, string lights, a small stage, my old toy guitar displayed like a trophy. I was floored. You didn't have to do this, I told her, my voice thick. I wanted to, she said, squeezing my hand. I want the world to hear you. The party was a blur of music and emotion. I played a few tracks live, And when Roots and Wings came on, I saw Mom in the crowd, her eyes shining. The critics were impressed, one even pulling me aside to say, "You've got something special here." But it was Mom's reaction that mattered most. After the last song, she hugged me, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, Ethan. I always will be." The album dropped a month later, and the response was overwhelming. Reviews called it raw and heartfelt, with Glass and Water and Roots and Wings as standouts. The tour that followed was bigger than I'd imagined. 10 cities, sold-out shows, fans singing my lyrics back to me. Mom came to the opening night in Chicago, sitting front row with Claire and Michael. When I dedicated Roots and Wings to her, the crowd cheered, and she stood, clapping through her tears. After the show, she found me backstage. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, "for giving me a chance to make things right." "You already have," I said, pulling her into a hug. "You're here." But healing isn't linear. A few weeks into the tour, Mom called, her voice tense. "I read a review," she said. "They called your music unpolished." I didn't like it. I laughed, surprising myself. "Mom, not every review will be glowing. It's part of the deal." "I know," she said, sighing. "I just want everyone to see what I see." Her protectiveness, once suffocating, now felt like love. "They will," I said. "Just keep listening." When the tour ended, I came home to a surprise. Mom had framed the album cover, hanging it in the living room next to Claire's law degree and Michael's medical awards. It was a small gesture, but it said everything. I wasn't the except one anymore. I was part of the family, my path as valid as theirs. At dinner that night, Mom raised her glass. "To all my kids," she said, her eyes lingering on me. "I'm proud of every single one." I smiled, raising my glass. "To us," I said. "All of us." The months after the tour were a new chapter. The album kept climbing, landing on national charts, and the label was already talking about a second one. I was living my dream. But more than that, I was living it with my family's support. Mom, especially, had become my unexpected ally, sharing my music with anyone who'd listen, even starting an Instagram account to post about my shows. It was endearing, if a little embarrassing. But the real victory wasn't the music, it was us. Mom and I had built something fragile but real, a bond forged through apologies, effort, and time. We still had our moments, her worrying about my future, me pushing back when she overstepped, but they were fewer, softer, more honest. One spring afternoon, I visited home, and Mom asked me to take a walk. We ended up at the park where I used to play as a kid, the same place I'd strummed that toy guitar. She sat on a bench, patting the spot next to her. "I've been thinking," she said, "about that night. The envelope." I nodded, the memory still vivid. "Yeah, that was a turning point." "It was," she said, her voice quiet. "I was so angry at first, reading your letter. But it woke me up. I didn't want to lose you, Ethan." "You didn't," I said, meeting her eyes. "You're here." She smiled, tears brimming. "I want to keep being here. For all of it, your music, your life, everything." We sat in silence, watching kids play on the swings, the air warm with the promise of spring. For the first time, I felt at peace with her, with us. The pain of her words, "except one," would always linger. But it no longer defined me. I'd proven myself, not just to her, but to myself. The second album came together faster than the first, fueled by everything I'd learned. I wrote about redemption, about family, about the courage to forgive. Mom was there for the recording, sitting in the studio, her presence a quiet reminder of how far we'd come. When I played her the final mix, she cried, not out of guilt, but joy. At the album's release, she threw another party, bigger this time, with friends, fans, and family packed into a local venue. She gave a speech, her voice steady and proud. My son taught me that success isn't one thing. She said, it's being true to who you are. I'm proud of all my kids. But tonight, this is for Ethan. The crowd cheered, and I felt my chest swell. I took the stage, guitar in hand, and played Roots and Wings one last time for her. As the final note faded, I looked out and saw her, standing with Claire and Michael, her face glowing with love. Years later, when I looked back, that envelope was the moment everything changed. It wasn't just a letter or a ticket, it was a challenge, a plea, a bridge. Mom and I weren't perfect, but we were real. We'd learned to see each other, to listen, to love without conditions. At a family dinner, years after that night, Mom raised her glass, her eyes bright. To my kids, she said, all of them. I raised mine, smiling. To family, I said, and to never giving up. As we clinked glasses, I felt the weight of the past, the hope of the future, and the love that held us together. We weren't just a family. We were a story, still being written, one note at a time.